All right. Welcome, everybody. Welcome, Shaun, my co-host.
Hello,
we're back again this month.
everyone.
How are you doing?
I'm good. We're all good and still in the north, as you can see behind me. I wish the weather was better. We've got pretty horrible winds and horizontal rain right now outside. So if you can hear some weird thudding noises, it's the raindrops hitting the window of my office. So it's a bit horrible out there right now. But yeah, good to be here and very pleased to say that we have a fantastic guest. Good friend of mine from Autodesk. She is the queen of prefab, Amy Marks.
All right, let's pull Amy up here. Get organized. Welcome, Amy. We really appreciate you joining us today. What part of we sort of got me coming from Arizona, Shaun coming from the UK. Where are you coming from?
I'm in the craziest place ever. I'm today in my home in New Jersey, in the United States.
In New Jersey, okay. New Jersey might be the craziest place, maybe.
They tell me I live here, but I'm in New Jersey.
Like it. So we're here today, basically because Amy is here and she's the queen of prefab. And what I wanted to bring Amy along for is there's lots of stuff going on in the construction world at the moment. And one of the big things is prefabrication and industrialized construction. And I wanted to make sure that Amy was here. Amy is, well, the prefab evangelist as far as I'm concerned. I've known Amy for a while now. We've done a few projects together. And basically what Amy doesn't know about prefab probably isn't worth knowing, right? So, and Amy's great about talking about it and putting it in a way that everybody understands it. So one of my first things that I want to ask you, Amy, let's jump into this right now, and then hopefully this will kickstart the conversation into all the other stuff that we can talk about today, is one, why industrialized construction, more to the point, and what purpose does it serve? And can you explain that in a way? Imagine I've never heard of it before. I mean, obviously I know what it means, but explain it in terms that people who haven't heard of it in their industry would understand. So we were talking about the house that industrialized construction built, and you've got a nice slide there that we can jump into and you can talk us through it. I think that's probably going to be the best way. So if you want to do your technical stuff, Jim, in the background and get Amy's slide up, then Amy can explain that for us straight away off the bat.
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to share my screen because I think it's really important to just go through the basics so we're all level set on language here. And so let me do that first. So I like to think of industrialized construction. This is the house that industrialized construction built, right? So it's the application of manufacturing techniques to the entirety of the built environment, right? It's really the convergence of those techniques into the design, construction, and manufacturing. It's really all converged, right? But that house is built on some foundation of both process and technology enablers. So if you start over on the technology side, right, we're in a highly instrumented world where everything has sensors, where there are IoT sensors on everything. And we can use machine learning and AI now to really see what's happening with all kinds of pieces and parts and manufactured pieces and parts. So that's a part of this right now, where we can get a lot of big data and analytics from things that have been manufactured. And we can really find out how they're performing, where they are, where they're coming from, where they've been put in place. And really that is enabled through the cloud and having open platforms for us to see where those manufactured pieces and parts came from and what they're doing. And we can share information about them when we're designing with them and when we're putting them in place and where they are in their factories, even before they get out to the job sites. So there's a lot of technology enablers that are helping with this industrialized construction outcome right now. And then there are both process enablers that are happening. So we can use some of that information for predictive manufacturing tools. So as I said, where are these pieces and parts, how we want to make them, what's the most productive way to make these things, what's the most productive way in our process and design. And you know what building information modeling is, obviously, in this group of people that are watching. But how do we make that eye in building information modeling more informed with things like manufacturing information in the design so that the eye becomes really intelligent. And so many of you, again, know about BIM, but BIM was just the starting place. We have to really make that eye, again, more intelligent from the maker's domain expertise so that we inform that upfront with MID. And so, again, it's going to be more about the data for manufacturing and assembly, not really just design for manufacturing and assembly, because we borrowed that phrase DFMA for manufacturing. And unfortunately, because it said design in it, we sort of put that onus on all the architects. And it's impossible for an architect to know all the rules and constraints of every product, multiplied by every proprietary product or every like element of a building. So we really have to start understanding the data of all these parts of the buildings and the way in which they're manufactured and meant to be adjacent to other systems in the building. And that's when we start getting up to what we now think of as prefabricated elements and components in the building. So things like advanced building products or single trade assemblies like pipe spools or electrical whips. And multi-trade assemblies, things like bathroom pods, as a lot of people see, those are distribution racks, multi-trade racks, or risers. And then we often talk about volumetric modules. So when you see, I always like to say the, sexy boxes stacked on boxes that people talk about for hospitals or housing. But that's a continuum of prefabricated products, but one is not better than another. In fact, it just depends on, why you're using some of those. And hopefully a combination of those is the best. But oftentimes prefabrication is happening downstream once a BIM model is made, and then we're sort of like creating geometric spaces, and then prefabrication is happening afterwards. This needs to change, and we need to productize some things if we're the makers. Manufacturers already have products. Eventually, everything needs to become products so that manufacturing information can actually inform our BIM models so that we can take all the data we know about making things and actually use some advanced, building methodologies like robotics and automated manufacturing, automation in our manufacturing processes, and things like additive manufacturing, like 3D printing, so we can really make these products in a more effective way and aggregate them into our building methodologies on site in situ in a much more efficient way. So all of these things in totality are outcomes of industrialized construction. So a lot of people think, well, they're just boxes, but that's not true. And so I really want people to recognize that all of this in this house that industrialized construction built is really the outcome of industrialized construction. So it's a much more complex conversation than just, hey, we're talking about housing modules. And that's really important to note.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I love the idea of that prefabrication continuum, and you made some comments in there about there's not a single thing that's better. It's a continuum. I love that I love that idea, because I think people do tend to focus on like just one thing. Like you said, prefabricated houses. We're going to build, we're going to do modular housing, and that's prefabrication, and that's industrialized construction. And you're right. It's this huge thing.
I mean, think about, somebody said to me recently, they're in a major city and they're like, I don't see any prefabrication or productization happening, any manufactured products in any of these high rises. And I said, well, first of all, that's not true. There's not a high rise in the world in any major city these days that doesn't have mechanical or electrical or plumbing productization or prefabrication happening at all. Every major mechanical, electrical, plumbing contractor in any major city has a fabrication or manufacturing facility that's doing all that work in their shops. So that's not true. You just don't see it with your eye because it's not boxes stacked on boxes. So you have to recognize that this is a much greater conversation. And the guys moving fastest are both in structure and in heavy MEP, where all the money is right now. And there is a big difference between prefab and products. And it's shifting from prefab into products now. And those people that are moving fastest are obviously the people that have manufacturing products now that are aggregating larger and larger assemblies. And the heavy MEP and structure guys are moving away from prefab into more products that are more standardized but scalable than the real prefab guys that are doing things downstream.
MEP's like way ahead of everybody else, though.
Services for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. I saw a fantastic project on LinkedIn the other day. It was, I think, if I remember rightly, Claridge's in London. and they've developed a 6-story basement. And the guy put up some of the Revit 3D views of this project, and I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
There's just so much stuff in this itty bitty space, and you can see where everything has been standardized. The pipe runs, you could see the cable trays, everything had been almost reduced to kind of a Lego kind of environment where you go, oh, we need that bit, that bit, that bit, and it goes there. That bit, and it, like you say, it all comes down to products that join together and can just be almost like pick and click, that goes there.
Right.
And it's happening. And like you say, Amy, a lot of people aren't seeing that happening because it is in essence, and I don't want to kind of knock the MEP, but it's internal rather than external. And the MEP stuff is, to me, especially working with products like Revit, is the really important bit. Because the last thing you want is something like an HVAC system that is working perfectly to have to change all of its variables and system numbers and everything else because there's structure in the way. You want everything to tie together.
Well, that's where the money is. Let's face facts, right? That's where the money is.
Oh, absolutely.
And again, like, I truly believe that Revit will consume that data. I don't necessarily think that that's necessarily where manufacturing information should start when it comes to manufactured products, right? So I think, yes, there's some great Revit to fabrication workflows, but again, I do think that, you know, there's manufacturing information. We have great tools and things like Inventor and Fusion, and there's also great application independent data that exists. And that's one of the reasons that the cloud information modeling that you saw in Autodesk platform services that's begun and it has been going on is so important, because you want to use the right tool to identify the right workflows for the right types of products, right? So it's like, it's really important that we all recognize that is why there is a platform service out there, that the Autodesk platform services is out there. It's like, I always say, look, this is my Apple phone. It's a platform. I happen not to like Apple Music. I like Spotify, right? I like that tool on my platform because for my music listening, it's better for what I want to do. And so you have to make sure you're using the right tool for the right function that you want to use, right? I use Waze, not Apple Maps, as another example, right? You might use I use WhatsApp. I don't happen to use my text that often when I'm going internationally. So I think Revit is a fantastic tool to consume some of that manufacturing data, but it may not be environment.
Losing audio a little bit there, Amy. You're kind of frozen a bit.
Oh, I think I lost you there for a second. Are you back?
Yep, it kind of went a bit grumpy.
You're back.
We got you back.
Let's you're still kind of fading back in here, so let's give it a second to catch up. And but I want to stop for just a second,
sure,
and kind of build on a couple of things you said. Before I do that, though, I did forget. This is the first time we've done this. We have our giveaway. So I have this like great giveaway tool now in the live stream, and Amy got us some swag from Autodesk. The way that you enter that giveaway is you ask us a question, or you make a comment, or say hello, or do something in the chat, right? So that's how you get in the chat, and that is kind of cool. And I don't know what you can see on your screen, Shaun or Amy, but we've got people here from Haiti, Norway, Kenya, Saudi Arabia, South Africa. I love the reach. I love the reach.
Yeah, it's great. And as Jim quite rightly said, you got to be in it to win it. So get those comments in there and get those questions in there.
That's right. You gotta put something in the chat to enter. Yep. Anything in the chat. We'll enter
even if it's just a hello, I'm from so and so.
That's right.
It's fine.
I hope you ask some good questions. Ask some good questions. Come on.
Yeah, we want some questions.
And that's the other thing. So I want to point out that I like Shaun and I kind of talk about prefab, and I talk about modular from a general construction management point of view. But Amy, you've been talking about industrialized construction for, I think I heard you say, like 15 years, like before most people were talking about industrialized construction. So
yeah,
this is we we love questions on the show generally. I think Amy really loves questions. So yeah, this is your opportunity. Throw questions in the chat, please.
You just aged me, by the way. I love to tell my age, by the way. I'm 51. I've been in this game a long time. I like the blonde hair. Don't let it fool you. I've been in the game a long time. So I will answer. And I've built all over the world for industrialized construction, worked all over the world, in Asia, in Africa, in Latin America, Pacific Islands. You tell me, Europe, like I'll answer any questions. Middle East, you tell me. I will answer some questions, guys.
Well, how have you seen things progress in the world of prefab or industrialized over this time? Like from my perspective, we've seen this real ramp up all of a sudden. But again, I've got probably a narrower view than you do. What do you think? What do you?
I think, listen, it used to be in some ways, it was like, conventional construction under a roof at one point. I think that was like, you were really shocked when you saw a multi-story modular building being built inside. And I think the things that really impress me now when I go into a factory is it looks like a manufacturing facility. And that's impressive. But what really impresses me now when I walk into a facility, other than that I see, manufacturing techniques being applied, is the data story, the digitization of what they're doing when that's the output. Like the factory and the manufacturing facility is the output. But when I actually see that they have products, they're productized, and that they're informing the designs of the designers up front that are conceptualizing and using things that are productized in a generative way. They're doing things like test fit with those products that they have to understand. They're doing, understanding the carbon analysis with the products that they're understanding so that they can pick the right ways. Look, we just did a project in our consulting side at Autodesk to help them design with the right kit of parts for the right embodied carbon they were trying to achieve, and then pack the trucks for the most efficient way to unload the trucks and the right number of trucks. They were looking for a reduction of carbon in the truck traffic. So it's like, that's the kind of things that impress me now, because that digital waste that existed when you were building as a construction company under a roof, we're trying to eliminate that digital waste so that physical waste doesn't exist anymore. The landfill waste is now reduced, and the carbon, the embodied carbon is reduced, and things like that. That's what's really impressive about it now. And I think we're not talking enough about, the life cycle carbon with that. It really can happen with industrialized construction, or the fact that data story and being able to take what's in our domain expertise and get it out in technology. By the way, all those standards, Shaun, that you talked about on that job, if somebody had to get up there in that Lego project and get it sold with their mouth or their feet by sitting next to an architect, that's what we want to eliminate. If they can't find that and be able to inform their designs.
That's exactly it. And that leads into a quick question I've got that we did discuss, before we started today. And you talked about, obviously, the digital waste, the physical waste, and how we can save on that and reduce the carbon footprint and become more sustainable. Another thing that gets talked about a lot now is the digital twin and the golden thread, all that kind of stuff. How does that work when we want to take that digital waste and that physical waste? How does the digital twin tie into that? How does that help?
Well, it's funny. I see a question from Dennis. Great question, Dennis, out there. He's talking about same thing. How do you see computer vision AI being applied for the collection of data, gaining understanding, and the ability to act instantly? A little bit tied to that digital twin conversation. Listen, anytime you have a physical piece part, like an assembly that you can attach sensor information to, right? You want to understand, it's like you can actually understand a data backbone for that assembly. You can actually understand, asset data to that particular, let's call it a skid even, right? To the components that are part of that skid. You can have a data backbone associated with that skid and understand the specifications for that. And also referring back to things like what the costs and the bill of materials and what the embodied carbon are for that, like I just discussed with that one particular client. And I can follow that skid in its life cycle from conceptualizing that skid all the way through its design process, all the way through its fabrication, all the way to its on site and its commissioning. And then with that sensor data, understand how it's performing over its life cycle, right? And all its preventative maintenance that's necessary. And then understand how it's performing. So the next time I want to use it, I can understand what that life cycle of that skid or whatever that particular assembly is, right? So if you combine all that sensor data in that building of all these things and understand how that is performing, or I understand maybe its life cycle, can I reuse it? Can I decouple it and reuse it next for something else? Now you're really talking about data, right? So if you can think about these buildings as components and reusable components, right, that may be able to be pulled out. And if I can design with that in mind, with all that data, that's where you're really talking about digital twin, right? That's where you're thinking about if I can design not just the equipment in a building, but the building as pieces of equipment. Now that's digital twin. Think about test fits, what that will do for test fits. Think about if I knew what equipment was performing and how I could be combining equipment, and not just for asset management. Now think about digital twins that might exist outside of the planning twin. Think about things like climate twin. Think about things like fiber twins of what fiber exists for data centers that are out there in the world. If I can start combining layers of twin with what we're building, and think about what that would do for our environment and our choices about where we would build buildings, about what reusable components and kits of parts we would use. I mean, we're not even scratching the surface of what if we could componentize these buildings and have sensor data, we would be able to understand and predict and be able to reuse because of industrialized construction. Right,
Yeah.
Shaun? Right, Jim? Think about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
you're right. We're not even that's a good. We are not even scratching the surface. That's
And
I
yet
mean,
we're still talking about like, should I use a panel? Should I not use a panel?
Yeah.
What are we? We're like basically saying, should I email or should I send a letter? Like seriously, like we live in a world where we have like all the technology we have today, and
Yep.
we have people sitting here going like, should I email or should, like, come on. It's kind of crazy that we're even having these conversations anymore. When,
Agreed.
by the way, I said it like this to a guy the other day. I'm like, we have to start thinking about expected experience. Now, I'm surrounded by a bunch of guys from Boston. Ready, Shaun, for the story? This is a
Yeah, go for it.
this is a true story from this week, right? I just told this like story. I was talking to Shaun before, and I said I have a great story for you and Jim. I was at a conference. I'm standing around a bunch of guys from Boston, and if you don't know what Boston's like, it's basically like New York and Boston guys, old school guys in construction. And I said, hey, like imagine a world one day where an architect could actually like click on something and basically say like, hey, I want to design with this mechanical, electrical, plumbing rack. And I want to understand what's available out there, right? And I could click on it and be able to like, just like, and I said, what's the thing that you like to do in life? He goes, I like fishing. And I said, great. Can you imagine, how do you search for things in fishing? He goes, I go online. I said, yeah, because what's the other option? He goes, there is no other option. I go, right. You don't want a guy coming door to door with his mouth and his feet going, knock. Hey, Mr. Smith, do you want to know about every fishing pole and option there is? He goes, I would never want anyone knocking on my door. I go, but you have to do that for every architect that wants to buy your mechanical, electrical, plumbing rack, right? He goes, pretty much. I said, okay, so just like you want to go look for fishing, imagine an architect could go and look at all the options you have available with your MEP rack. And while he was like designing, and he goes, yeah, but like we've got a lot of different options. I go, well, what do you do for fishing? He goes, chat pops up online and I could like ask it questions. And I go, yeah, a bot basically pops up and you go, I have these parameters of what I'm looking for with my fishing rod. And he goes, yeah. And he goes, sometimes I have a special, like I'll show him a picture of my boat and I just upload it. This is an old guy talking about his boat. He goes, this is my rig. And they go, oh yeah, you need this version of this thing. It fits your boat. He goes, yeah, that's the bot. And then he goes, I go, what happens if they don't answer? They go, well, the guy goes, do you want a video chat with one of our engineers for your boat? And he goes, yes. I go, so like basically you're saying like one day while I was in my drawings, somebody would chat with you and you'd be sitting in your engineering office and they'd be like, oh, do you want to? And then they'd say, yes, you need this product or it would be custom, use this part number. And we could, do you want us to give you then ship it out today? And he goes, wow, one day I'm basically just going to be a bot, right? And he goes, I could be a bot. And I go, yeah, they would use like AI and machine learning to say the last 20 times you answered that question, you wouldn't even have to get on video chat. He goes, that would be so much easier. I said, yeah. And you realize like all of that technology exists today. We should start using our expected experience. That's a phrase we've been talking about. Like, but yet every day you think the only way to sell that is you have to go and knock on that architect's door and somehow, or like later you're just stuck. He goes, I don't know. I left you this much space. Figure it out. But yet in every other part of your life, whether you're buying a Jeep or a fishing pole or the most complicated thing in your life, We do something else. Think about it. I'm like, all of that technology that we just said exists on this planet today. But you today, if you want something to show up on your job site, you're like, I got to call a guy who calls a guy who calls a guy who calls a guy. But on my iWatch, on my Apple Watch right now, if I wanted to order a pizza, I could order it, know when it went in the oven, pay for it on Venmo, customize it. I would see the guy's face and his license plate, know what his car was. And before he showed up at my house, I would see his face. He would be security checked. And I would have to go. And yet I'm calling a guy who calls a guy who calls a guy. And literally this old guy was like kind of old school. He goes, one day I'm going to be a bot. Right. and then the other guy goes, yeah, but like, then, who's going to do my job? I go, who's there to do your job right now? Anyway, we can't even find anybody who wants to do your job. And he goes, yeah, you're right. It can't hire anybody who even knows how to do my job right now. He goes, somebody should come and ask me all these questions I know to make me a bot. I said, exactly. We need that right now.
That's it.
So
I
here's
I just want to jump in real quick there, because you just made me think of something there, Amy. Yesterday, I was doing our customary sort of quarterly visit to IKEA to get stuff.
Right.
Because we moved into a new house in February, and as Jim already knows, we're refurbing and everything and putting furniture in various places. There were two things that your conversation that you've just had with us have really stood out for me. One of the things I noticed in IKEA now is you can actually buy compostable furniture, which blew my mind. I was like, wow, I can buy a chair and I can put it in my I can break it down, put it in my compost bin, and it will turn into compost.
Wow.
For my plants. And I thought, one, that's amazing from a carbon sustainability viewpoint.
Absolutely.
But you were talking about becoming a bot, right? With this guy from Boston.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things that IKEA does now, which again blows my mind, is there's a little app on your phone. And you can literally, I can sit in my office here and I can pick an IKEA piece of furniture and I can drop it into my camera space and go, oh, I want it in that corner there. Does it look nice? This is what we want to see with all these lovely component parts for the architects. Because for me, if I'm designing a building and I can actually just go, oh, okay, if I click on that, that'll show me where that goes. That'll show me where that goes.
Right.
Like you say, productization. That's where it needs to go.
And you want the ability to put it in there and have everything else adjust parametrically in real.
Yep.
And by the way, and you want it to be able to like then send that information to your general contractor with cost and schedule and availability in real time. And you want that look, I'm not safe harbor. I'm not saying any of this exists. I want that to be very clear. We're talking about what should be in the future state, not what is. And I'm letting what I believe that's why this is storytelling and thought leadership and evangelism of what our expected experience needs to be in our world. Because look, at the end of the day, you're talking about countries that are existing today that won't let you in. Even in the Nordics, there are some places that don't want you to tear down buildings because of the life cycle of the carbon, with steel and concrete. And that's think about what I just said and what you said. In components, when you're thinking about productization and reuse of those components, there should be a resale market for those components, right?
Yeah.
You don't have that now, because if you're just creating geometric spaces and you're making the MEP guys interweave these systems because you didn't leave them space and you weren't thinking about anything other than the floor plans, like you can't reuse these things that were like spider webs built into places that they just could make them. I always say it's like poche. You made them pour water into space just wherever they would fit. It's very hard to untangle that and reuse that. But if you thought in productization, in products that had to work together like Legos, you could decouple those and reuse them and resell them. And you could leave the building the steel and concrete where most of the embodied carbon is. You could leave those intact and then reuse the MEP systems. That's going to happen. Like, you don't have to be a fortune teller and a futurist like me to know that's coming. Like, you just have to read the news. And so then you have to start thinking in design in those terms from a sustainability perspective of like, okay, knowing that someone's going to stop me from ripping these buildings down and putting them up, what is the right way to design for this kit of parts that would fit that? And an architect doesn't know how those kits of parts are made. And if the only way for me to do that is with going and talking to people, that's also not the most effective way. So look, I don't do anything by going to talk to anybody. And I pulled this out for you today, Shaun. I always keep this by my desk. I don't buy shoes by going and walking down to a cobbler and putting my foot down on a piece of paper and having them draw, like somebody wrote on parchment in your questions.
Yeah, that was a great call by Charles.
Charles, I don't go down and put my foot on a piece of parchment paper and have somebody draw a line around my toes anymore. But somehow we think that's acceptable in our space. And that's not okay, right? Like, I don't have to do that in any other place on this planet. So the fact that we're doing that still is wrong. So we should stop doing that. And I really believe that we have to start using our expected experience everywhere else in the world. By the way, you want to bring young people here to this space, it's their expected experience that we don't do that either, right? Like, they would be able to go and do anything else in a different way. You want to bring them into the design world, into the construction world, into any part of this space, and bring people that want to learn about machine learning and AI and computer science here. We have to start converging those things into our world, and social media and all that. They have to want to work in the space, right? They order pizzas off their Apple Watch every day, like I said, right?
Yeah, and it's a great analogy. We have, I mean, I think you commented on, I think it was 6 million videos on welding on TikTok right now or something.
6 million hashtags. 6 billion. 6 billion hashtags.
Hashtags about welding on TikTok.
Last time I looked.
It sums it up. I mean, I'm guilty. I look at TikTok. I drive my wife Michelle absolutely nuts. We're meant to be sitting there watching a TV show, and I'm flicking up through TikTok.
I don't even know what TV is anymore. What is TV anymore?
I binge watch the occasional show still. I'm afraid I still do. But no, I was looking at TikTok. I mean, one of the things.
But you stream it. Right?
I stream it.
You don't watch it on TV.
Exactly. Yes, I stream it. I don't watch live TV. I stream it. But on TikTok, though, I mean, for me, you know, the DIY stuff where I kind of look at something and I think, wow, we could use that in the house. And it's immediately saved as one of my, you know, preferred TikTok hashtags and that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I mean, from an architectural, construction-y kind of viewpoint for me, because that's my background, if I'd had the technology that we have now, even just the simple stuff like, say, AutoCAD Web, if I'd had that 25 years ago, the productivity gains would be huge. Having a drawing in the cloud that I can actually work on an iPad and make changes to, and it changes the drawing in the cloud so that when I get back to the office, all I've got to do is refine that design. It's an amazing, and also for transfer of error, because you'll be sketching it in an engineer's pad or whatever. You know, the technology that we've got now is incredible.
So now, are you watching these questions, Shaun? Keep going. I don't want to.
They're certainly popping up.
They are.
I'm struggling to keep up.
You were saying, sorry, if you had the technology then that you had now, is what you were saying.
Yeah, the productivity gains would be huge. That would be one of the first big things, the productivity gains. But then the one that for me that's really important now, especially the fact that I've got kids, I've got grandkids and everything else, is making sure that what we do makes for a better world for them in that next 25 years.
Right.
It's so important. And that's where things like we talked about, the digital waste, the physical waste, we've got to reduce that. And we've got to have not only the technology, but the workflows and the processes there to avoid all of this rework. The one thing that used to drive me nuts 25 years ago was I used to have a big pile of hard copy drawings on my desk as a CAD manager. They all had red line markups on and rubber stamps on them and everything else. That is now digitized.
I know.
You know, I could probably do the work.
But I'm going to stop you right there, right? Because it is digitized for you.
Yeah.
But when I go out on the job site, that same pile of drawings is still there. So my question, you know, for you, Shaun, and you, Amy, Shaun, you commented that if you had the technology 25 years ago, look at where we'd be. Okay, we didn't have it 25 years ago. We can't go back in time, but we have it right now.
Yeah, we do.
What is preventing people from using it?
So by the way,
why are we being resistant to it? Why?
For the record, he said he has digitized waste because red line digitization is still waste. You just digitize waste for waste on waste. But I will say that we have it all right now, but it's in the wrong order, right? So it's like you have to rearrange. We have all the pieces to play chess. It's just set up to play a game called Mahjong, right? It's like you just need to rearrange the chess pieces. And I think one of the most amazing things that happened at AU, Shaun, you were there too, is this announcement of Fusion, Forma, and Flow. And I think it's been in the works and has been really, that's the foundation for this transformation that's happening at Autodesk. And not because I work there. I truly do believe that is the foundation of transformation and in cloud modeling and this connection of the data, this open platform. And you really have to know that. I truly do believe that and know that this truly is the beginning of, like, you know, Autodesk equals that Apple conversation I had earlier, that like that's where those workflows are getting rearranged, where you truly can get, we have customers building, you know, their apps right now on the Autodesk platform services, where they can be the next Waze on the Apple platform, or be the next, you know, domain expertise.
That's what
But
we need.
that
Exactly what we need.
connection has to happen. And I do think it's one of the reasons why I love the part where I work at Autodesk, which is I don't sell software and I don't sell services, but I get to work in a place called customer success. And customer success is where we work with our customers to figure out how to rearrange those workflows to make them actually stream through not just our products, but other people's products. And we build integrations in those workflows to make them actually flow in the right order and for the right business use cases. So that's what I'm really excited about. And that I love working on the teams that I get to see some of these cool things that are happening, like that example I gave you about, you know, the carbon calculations for how to pack the trucks and unpack the trucks. And
that's amazing.
That's the cool stuff that I get to work on and see being worked on all the time. And I do think that the Autodesk platform services and the announcements that were made, that work is being done. So again, I wouldn't say that we're, you know, where Apple is at today, like, but Apple didn't start where they are today either. You know, there wasn't CarPlay and there wasn't Apple Home and there wasn't all the things I have now. But I do see that trajectory happening with what we just made that announcement. And I think that's the thing. And if you want to be, I always say you want to be this tall to ride the ride, you do have to be, you know, getting, you know, building information modeling, getting those skills in check. You do have to get into the cloud with using like our, you know, our cloud, you know, products, when you're talking about using things like Fusion and using things like our Autodesk construction cloud, because those are the tools that have already been built in that way. So you have to start connecting, and things like Spacemaker and things, you know, where we're using those tools. So I think, again, like that's some of the exciting stuff that makes, I can see those things coming together. But I do think you've got to really start understanding how that connects with your business, and you've got to get that domain knowledge, and you've got to start, you know, you've got to understand what that is and start digitizing at the very basic level. You've got to start getting it out of your heads and getting it off of paper, and you've got to start looking at it, you know, in digital form, right? You got to start measuring things.
There's no doubt about it. I was at Autodesk in Birmingham in the UK last month for various meetings and various bits and pieces. And I had a fantastic conversation over dinner with some of the, I can't remember which department of Autodesk it was now, what they're actually called. Global Enablement. That was the one. I was talking to some guys from Global Enablement.
Love it.
And basically, we got talking about first generation products and second generation products. So, for example, if you work with Inventor, that's a first generation product.
Right.
If you work with Fusion 360, it's a second generation product. And I've been dabbling with Fusion 360. It fascinates me, all that stuff. And Fusion 360, it's just there. You're working in the cloud. Everything is digital. There's no hitting a button, like Jim said, to get a paper drawing out to somebody on the shop floor to build it. There's no need for that. You know, you just hit a button and it goes to somebody else and goes into a machine and it's made, done.
I mean, there's so many cool tools. It's really about understanding your business process and your product development, at least in industrialized construction. It's like, look, I always say to every CEO around the world, and it always translates in every language, what does your business want to be when it grows up? Like, what are you trying to be when you grow up? And what does that look like? And what are the characteristics of that business? And let's understand where you want to go. And what are the first concrete steps of action you can take to get there, right? So it's not going to be about one product. It's not going to be about one thing. It's about getting, you know, the right steps on that journey for that end state, right? And again, like there are some great products that are out there. A couple of people are mentioning some products, some are ours, some are not. And that's okay. Because again, like I just said, depending on what you want to do, there's no one ring to rule them all, right? Like I happen to be an Apple girl. And again, I told you, I don't use Apple Music. I use Spotify. I think there are some great tools that we own, some we're buying, some that are not ours, that work in tandem together, depending on what you want to do. But you have to know what you want to do. And then you have to map how to get there. And you've got to understand those workflows that you want for those outcomes that you're trying to understand. And there's going to be more than one solution to get you on that journey. That's the trick about industrialized construction, by the way. There's not one solution that gets you there, if you think about it, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
you're going to need a common data environment. You're going to need to understand productization. You're going to need to understand, things like building information modeling and how that productization, your products, how manufacturing informed design is going to have to influence your building information modeling. You're going to have to understand your integrated factory modeling and things like factory layout and digital twin. There's a lot of solutions I just mentioned that are going to get you to that industrialized construction, that sort of factory that you want to get to at the end state. And by the way, if you own a factory, if you want to get to industrialized construction as an owner, those might be a different combination of some of those solutions to get to like owning your data at the digital twin state. So it's a complex conversation that I think if any one person says it's these three things get you there and doesn't really do an analysis of your success plan, they're just not giving you the right answer. Even me, like you have to really know.
No, I love your analogy of we have all the right pieces. They're just not organized correctly.
Right.
I think this kind of pulls that together as well. Like how well is integrated project delivery, or really any early contractor engagement means of project delivery? How does that fit into this? Like it helps enable this, right? That's always been our problem in construction, because not only do we have all these parts and pieces and tools and components, but we have the owner over here, we have the architect over here. The architects hired independent engineers for structural and mechanical and electrical, and then we've got the contractor over here, and everybody's trying to protect their own domain and make money, right? So integrated project delivery is to me, a true IPD project is like a perfect project to start that conversation super early on, how can we, what are our goals here? And then how can we accomplish all those goals? And how does industrialize, how does prefab, how does that all fit in here? Do I want a digital twin? Do I not want to, what is that going to do for me?
I mean, behaviors are behaviors. IFOA is a different conversation. Look, my friend Will Litchig wrote the IFOA, like who is at both. He's a great friend of mine. I've seen integrated project delivery methods and projects go really, really well. And I've seen them go really, really terrible.
You bet.
Behavior, right? Yeah. So and I'm going to answer that and you might hate my answer. You could be on the small group executive committee. If you don't fabricate and you're not making those pieces and parts, what are you going to do? Go back to your boss and be like, hey, it was better for the project, but that $300 million contract that we fought so hard for, it's $100 million now, but it's way better for the project. That never happens, Jim.
Right.
And if the best thing we ever have is that we wrote an agreement that we come to the table and all talk to each other, you don't need a contract for that. I'm sorry. So I feel like there's pros and cons, but at the end of the day, if that's the best we got, I would say it's never a bad thing for us all to come together and say, these are the goals. You know what I mean? But we have to have more than that. You know what I mean? And again, we're coming together. You know why we're all coming together to talk about things? Because that's all we have. You have to come with your mouth and your feet, because that's all we got. Right? There is no other way for that architect to get that information. There's no other way for that owner to understand. Look, what are the data standards tell me this, what BIM standards are? What are the data standards that an owner puts out that they need to understand? There is no such thing.
No.
There is no such thing. So what is the option? Let's do an integrated, there is nothing like that. So I think, and by the way, IPD is such a tiny percentage of projects that are done right now. So is AWP, that they have the numbers 0.00 something percent. So I'm not saying it's not a good thing. I mean, if you all come together and talk and do the right thing, that's like saying puppies and babies are not good too. They're all good. That's good to do it. But sorry, I hope you're not offended by what I'm saying, because I always speak at the Lean Congress every year. But good behavior is good behavior. Acting in the right way is always a good thing.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is that is tough to get done, and it's tough to define even, I think. Like you
Yeah.
said, what is good behavior? Is acting in the interest of the project good behavior, or is acting in the interest of my company good behavior? That's tough. It's a tough conversation.
It's
And
one of
again,
those
like,
things. It's a balance, isn't it? As well,
yeah.
it's like Amy said. That 300 million contract. It's now only 100 million.
And by the way, I used to sit on a small group with one, I won't say who they are, a mechanical contractor. They used to be like, racks are great, risers are great, bathroom pods, horrible. And I was like, it's the same thing, just rearranged in different. And I'd be like, I always say to the owner, you know why they never want to do bathroom pods? Those guys don't make them. Like, I can't figure for any other reason other than that, because it's like there's no difference between a pod and the rack and riser other than they don't make them. So they would like talk them out of making them every single time. And I'm like, they just don't make them. So they don't want to lose that work. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's funny. And like, you'll see
Absolutely.
things are changing. I was at a conference this week, just to give you an idea of how fast things change. I was at an MEP conference this week. A guy stopped me in the hallway and he goes, hey, 5 years ago, you said prefab is coming and I have to thank you. And we weren't doing any prefab. And now, like, it's 2022 and we're doing tons of prefab. He's like, what's coming next? Because he's like, here's what we're seeing. He's like, we're getting a lot of drawings in the United States where all these prefab things are actually cut out. And we don't have a chance to bid them because all the central utility plants, all the bathroom pods, all the complicated MEP areas are now going to manufacturers. We're not seeing them. And I was like, oh, well, we knew productization was coming and now he's not getting a chance to bid. And I said, well, you should be careful now because all the rest of the work, they don't need a big company like you anymore. Your overhead structure won't support the rest of these areas because they'll just get a smaller company now that's not as smart as you to do these less complicated areas. They won't have your overhead, right? He's like, yeah, that's what we're not. Now we're getting outpriced on the rest of the buildings. I walked over to have lunch 3 minutes later. True story. The next guy said, I said, hey, how many components in your like library of components are like these big assemblies? And he said, oh, we don't really productize right now. We just think it's easier, but we get the drawings and then we're like, we'll just do it as a one-off. Like when we get the drawings and we see those central utility plants, it's like, we'll just design them when we get the bids. And I said, that's so funny to me because the guy over there, he's not getting that chance anymore to do that. They're just carved out now. You should go talk to that guy. He lives 3 states over. How long until it's going to take till you don't get the chance anymore to bid those out? And the guy goes, what? Is that really happening to that guy? I go, he just told me he doesn't get to bid them anymore. Like this was literally, I walked from the hallway to the lunch. Like, you know how quickly this is moving? Like that's how fast this is happening. That if you don't recognize that this is changing the way you do business or that you're not going to do business, you better wake up. Like, I mean, literally that guy, how funny that's, by the way, the United States is big, but it's not that big. Right. And if that's happening right in our US market, imagine if you live in the UK. Imagine if you live in Europe. Imagine if you live like that's in the US, 4 states over. These are big owners now. What they do in one place, serial owners are going to do in the next place. Right.
Yep. Very much so. Yep. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've got some good friends. Well, they're good friends of friends that I've been to college with and so on. And one of them's very high up in one of the big construction companies here in the UK, a company called Mace that you've probably heard of. MACE.
Yeah, I know those guys.
Yeah. And some of the stuff that they're doing right now is just revolutionary here in the UK. You know, it sums up what Amy's been talking about with the industrialized construction, the prefab and everything else. And they do a lot of work for our government, creating things like hospitals, prisons, all those kind of governmental type buildings. And those contracts now are based on those industrialized construction workflows, the prefab workflows. It is literally, I joked about Lego earlier. It's like, oh, okay, the instruction book says we need a room this big, this big, this big. It's all been built somewhere else and it just gets dropped in with a crane.
Yeah.
The services and the trades come in, connect the water, connect the electrics, done.
I agree with Bart Rohal. We are amidst the transfer of technology revolution.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think
it is very much so that.
Totally going to be about like getting the domain expertise in sticky in technology right now. It's almost like I said to a guy, I'm like, we all are like we all want to eat chocolate cake right now. We all want to eat chocolate cake. And sitting out in front of us on a table is eggs, water, flour, sugar, cocoa, and a bowl and some mixing spoons and a hot oven over there. And we all want to eat cake. So why can't we eat cake right now? We've got to like have this transfer of technology right now, right? It's all here. We know it's here.
And
We just got to have this.
Kathy has nailed it there on the screen as well. The technology is amazing. I mean, you summed it up about ordering a pizza on your watch, right? I did that last night. We used Food Hub last night to order some food. And I was like, oh, look, they're preparing it. Oh, look, it's out for delivery. You know, that's what we want in our industries right now.
But we don't, here's why we don't have it, right? We have guys making, this is true. It's not that we can't do any of these things and we don't have the technology. That's not true. That's a lie. We have guys making money, and gals. We have guys and people making money on waste. Their contracts are set up to make money on waste. Their contracts are creating like lack of information or drawing things that aren't real or going out to, by the way, bidding and that transaction is a waste on waste on waste process. We have people making money on things that are drawn that'll never be built. We have people making money on going out to bid to people that'll never win. We have people bidding stuff that they will never win. We have manufacturers bidding 50 things they don't even know what the thing is, like that are so far downstream they don't even know what that valve is a part of. We have waste on. Remember what Jeff Bezos said. Remember one day he said, "Your margin on margin on margin on margin is my opportunity." We have waste on waste on waste on waste, and people are all getting paid for it right now. That is an ecosystem, and that's the problem. We're not an industry like we are an ecosystem of people getting paid and contracts that have been set up on waste. And that's the thing we have to overcome. And unfortunately, disruption happens in an industry bottomed up. This is the innovator's deception. It's top down has to change. It's the biggest places in the world. But those big industry, those big players at the government level, they can't listen to these architects. You still got to go out to 5 bidders. No, you don't. You should stop that nonsense. That waste on waste on waste, that dumb box that somebody wants to draw that says you got to keep it dumb so everyone can bid on it. That's just waste. Stop doing these wasteful waste on waste on waste on waste things. Stop doing that. That's what's stopping all this from happening. We have all the technology, all the people that know how to do this. Stop doing the things that are creating waste.
Love it.
I've got a fantastic analogy that came from AU for you, Amy. We had this wonderful panel at AU. It was called Architects versus Engineers, the showdown at the AU Corral, and we had lots of fun with it. But there was one particular slide that a friend of mine put in. He was one of the panelists, a guy called Matt Stacconi. Do you know Matt?
I don't know.
I don't know if you do. He works for one of the bigger sort of BIM contractors out there. And he's worked on some amazing projects, but he literally last minute, 5 minutes before the panel, gave me this amazing slide to put into the presentation. And basically it started off, Clint Eastwood was the general contractor.
Right.
You then went down to like Eli Wallach and Lee Van Cleef, good, the bad, and the ugly kind of analogy for the architect, the engineer, and so on.
All
and
men,
in the end, pardon me?
All men, I'm sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, but then it progressed, right? We then went down to, we had some Disney princesses, some Pixar characters. It all worked its way down.
Right.
And at the end, the owner was Squidward from SpongeBob, right? And he was just looking really sad and sorry for himself. And it kind of summed up that workflow that we have. We don't want the owner to be sad and looking like Squidward. We want the owner to kind of think, this is incredible. This is revolutionary.
Right.
What we're doing is amazing. And it just made me think about lots of stuff that we need to start doing. And I mean, you summed it up. You want an architect to kind of look at a digital catalog and go, I need that, that, and that. And when I join that together, it does that. But if I want that wall to be a bit longer, it adapts and parametrically changes to show me if I need extra product.
Yeah.
That's where it needs to go.
I want estimating, to be honest. Like, I think estimating is a weird term. I think, when I go buy things in real life, I don't get an estimate. I know what things cost, right? Like and by the way, we already have things on bundling. Like my expected experience that says, Amy, you should buy those shoes, these shirt, and this pants and these socks. Like, you get a better deal and they go together. And by the way, these are 5-star rated things and you'll get it in 2 days. And that's when I get it. Right. Like, and so I think that's my expected experience in life. Right. So I think the problem is that we just don't have that right now. And our contracts are based on things that shouldn't exist. I love, by the way, that Amin Abdi at Aidid, I hope I said your name right, said prefab is transforming and at the same time shutting the industry down. Gosh, I hope so, because our industry is not that good. Our ecosystem, like everything is over cost and over long. And we don't, by the way, for the record, some guy said to me the other day at a conference, he's like, do you ever breathe? And I said, I don't have time to breathe. I don't have time because we don't have enough places for people to live, and we don't have enough hospitals, and we have a digital divide right now, and with not enough infrastructure and not enough like places on this planet for people to have a safe water and for our planet that's being destroyed. I don't actually have time to breathe. I have a 14-year-old. I'd like to leave something for her on this planet. I don't think any of us have time to breathe. And the fact that we're doing these, by the way, the fact that 40% of what's in our landfills is construction waste, we should be ashamed. Like the fact that I stopped drinking out of plastic straws because some star on Entourage said we should stop. Where's my celebrity standing next to me saying, where's Ellen DeGeneres? Where is like Jason Momoa? Where are these guys standing next to me saying, stop 40% of what's going in our landfills? Because I need a celebrity right now. If you are a celebrity and you happen to catch this, or you have a friend that is a celebrity, I was going to do a 365 days of celebrity pitches because I need a celebrity, obviously, because I'm not enough. Because we should be ashamed of what is going into our landfills from our space. Why? Because you can't draw a geometric box and think somehow we're going to get a product in it one day without cutting something and creating garbage on our site that is going into the landfills. This is a travesty. We have to stop this digital waste that's leading to garbage on our planet. That's why I don't have time to breathe. So gosh, I hope this changes what we're doing. I should pray it does that, right?
Well, I really do hope that what we've talked about here does that as well, because one of the reasons I got you on, Amy, is to raise that profile, to raise that question.
And by the way, that is important to Autodesk. I know for Andrew Anagnos, he has said productization is the single most important thing we could do for this planet. I work at Autodesk because I know that we are believers. I came to Autodesk because I know that he believes. I know that he believes in manufacturing informed design. I know that many other people besides Andrew support what is going on this planet, which our carbon story of what we're trying to create carbon neutral companies, what we do at Autodesk. I really believe me. I couldn't work for a company that didn't believe. I know Chris Bittner and Elizabeth Zorn that I work with and Steve Blum. I know that when they get up on stage, I believe what they say. That's why I work here. You know what I mean? Like, and for those of you who know me, that is why I keep coming and waking up every day and coming to work, because we don't have time for this. We have to keep pushing forward. And that's why I came on your show, Shaun, because you push forward. You guys push forward, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. And, you know, I mean, I was waving my little drone at you the other day, just earlier, because
I know
I've gone wild and bought a drone. And, you know, I just want to get into that stuff because it's the way forward. I can fly a drone around a building and get an exterior survey, an as-built survey. That would normally take, you know, however many guys walking up and down stairs and whatever else, tape measures, digital tape measures, everything else. I want to see how all of this tech that we're kind of using now. I mean, some of this tech's amazing as well.
Oh my gosh, it's unbelievable.
You know, it blows my mind, some of this tech. It really does. I mean, I was joking with Jim when we were setting up, you know, the podcast today. I couldn't believe how tiny the box was that my drone arrived in. I was like, really? There's a drone in there? And this kind of tech is amazing, you know, and we need to start using this tech and making sure that the technology that we're using changes those workflows, it changes those processes to, like you quite rightly say, to make a better planet for our children, our grandchildren, and everything else. It's so important. Now, what I'd like to do, Jim has just flashed up on the screen the Autodesk swag and everything. So one of the lovely things about the platform we use for these podcasts, we use a thing called StreamYard, and we now have the ability to do a prize draw. So as I joked earlier, you've got to be in it to win it. So you need to have made a comment in the comments panel on the right-hand side of the screen. So if you've done that, you will be entered into the draw. And I'm going to leave Jim to do the technical wizardry and kind of spin the tombola drum and pull the ticket out, so to speak. So digitally, obviously, because there's no waste that way.
All right. Let's
get it in there.
This is the first time we've used this tool. Let's see if I can make it happen here. So if you have entered a comment, if you've entered a comment, then you are in the drawing. And if this works correctly, I'm going to hit draw. Oh, look at that. It's going to scroll through everybody.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
Oh, we're slowing down. It's like spinning the wheel, right? Winner, Ryan
Woo!
Ferguson. All right.
Excellent.
All right,
So
Ryan.
Ryan, you've got some Autodesk swag.
I love it.
So Ryan, if you will, I'm going to say direct message me, and we'll start a conversation. And I'll connect you with Amy, and we'll get the Autodesk swag out to you. Amy, thank you for
Yeah.
getting that donated. By the way,
Ryan's from the Bahamas. I would deliver it to you at this point.
Right. There you go. There you go. I like
not a bad journey to deliver a prize, right?
Exactly.
All right. Let me Brian, thank you for everybody that also participated, and we had great questions, we had great comments, we had a great discussion. Amy, I really do appreciate you coming on with Shaun and I think it was a great conversation, and I will definitely be sharing this throughout the coming weeks, like in my feed, because I really want more people to hear this conversation. I think it was a great conversation.
Yeah.
There were some great things said, and so I want people to continue watching this, even if you didn't get to watch live and you didn't get to be in the drawing. This recording lives on. So thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you so much, Amy. And obviously, send our best to Karen, who obviously does all the organization in the background for you. You know, you guys are great, and thank you so much for attending. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everybody.